Good evening. Welcome to the Brownstone. Welcome to Girlfriend Therapy Radio. Happy Thursday, everybody. What a wonderful, wonderful day. I am so excited to be here in the Brownstone. Absolutely one of my favorite places to be, and I hope you guys are tuning in because I absolutely enjoy talking with you or talking to you. But as you guys know, over the past couple of weeks, we've been talking about spirituality, what it is, what it isn't, how it differs from religion, and how to develop it. And these broadcasts have led to some other conversations that's taken place offline, which has been really interesting and really exciting for me just to kind of see you guys take and hear your thoughts about the topics that we talked about. And so some of the questions, which have been similar have been like, things like, so why spirituality? Why do we start there? How spirituality, what does it look like? And people would often say, I know what God says, but, I know what God has promised, but. So today I want to talk to you guys about spirituality, and I want to take it from theory to practice. So what does spirituality demonstrate? What does it look like? And what better way for me to do that? As you guys know, I am a storyteller at heart. So what better way for me to do that than to share by example and to share a testimony, a story of how God has grown me up and continues to grow me up spiritually. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we're going to talk about spirituality from theory to practice. And so you guys grab your pens. You know how we do. Grab your pen and your paper so you can take some notes. We're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to talk about it.
Girlfriend Therapy and Transformation of Life Christian Center, in partnership with Be The Match, is hosting a community bone marrow drive. Sadly, many cancer patients suffer damage to their bone marrow due to cancer treatment, and they find themselves in need of a bone marrow transplant. Because of the difficulty in finding a match, there are far too many people of color who do not have a fair fighting chance of survival. You can be the difference in their journey towards survival. Take the easy first step by joining the Be The Match registry. All it takes is a simple cheek swab. To be added to the registry, join us Sunday, March 19th at Transformation of Life Christian Center, located at 9633 Liberty Road, Suites H and J in Randallstown, Maryland, 21133. The bone marrow drive will begin promptly after service from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. For more information about this drive, visit our website at www.girlfriendtherapy.org. And to learn more about Be The Match and how you can support this very important cause, visit www.bethematch.org.
So welcome back. As you guys know, we're going to talk about spirituality, and we're going to take it from theory to practice. And like I said, one of the things I want to do is share with you guys just a testimony, a story, if you will, of how God has grown me up, from spirituality being in theory and into practice. And so as you guys know, there's always a foundation scripture. And so tonight is no different. The foundation scripture for tonight comes from Job 13 and 15. And it says, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. I love that scripture so much. And that is, like I said, the foundation scripture for tonight's, for tonight's show. And it will really align with the story that I'm going to share. So we're going to start in 2012. Don't worry, I'm not going to take you from 2012 to present, but the story actually took place in 2012 or across 2012. So in 2012, I found myself working with a very difficult client. The work that I do is like consulting work for a firm that, sends me out to work with particular clients. And like attorneys, you're only as good as you are billable. So when you're billable, your company is good, all is good. But in 2012, I found myself working with a very difficult client. I couldn't seem to do anything right. Nothing that I suggested, no idea that I ever offered was good enough. Nothing that I suggested ever seemed to make sense to her. It was just a really tough client to work with. And so after about 3 months of working with her, I reached back to my company and I was like, hey, this isn't working. We're not really vibing. We're not really gelling. It just doesn't feel like a good fit. And so my company assured me, they said, well, look, everything is okay. She hasn't complained, everything is good. And so if she's not complaining, then we're all good. Again, all they wanted to make sure was that I was billable. And so if she wasn't complaining, everything was good. So I supported this client for like 18 months. And at no point did things ever get any better. Like, I felt like I was, we were never in sync. I felt like I was a complete misfit, like totally inadequate. And I've always felt like I was a good communicator, like I could go into any situation, any scenario, and really make a difference and really, offer something substantial, to whatever team or whatever it was I was doing. I always just really felt like I was good in that way. But in this situation, it was just 18 months of just never seemed to click. Nothing ever seemed to work. And so, every day I would dread going to work. I would have an unbelievable anxiety every morning, every night going to bed, just thinking about having to go to work in the morning. It was just a dreadful, stressful situation. And I can remember every morning just really having to drag myself out of bed. And then I would drag myself to the car and I would drag myself to work. And when I got to work, my shoulders would be slumped, my head would be hung low. And I just dreaded really going into this work environment. And, I would get to a certain threshold every morning, and I would, straighten my shoulders up, lift my head up, erect my shoulders, and I would say, Lord, I trust you with me. And I did this for 18 months. I worked with this particular client for 18 months. And throughout the 18 months, I would kind of go back to my company time and time again and just let them know, hey, this still isn't working. I'm still not feeling it. We're still not vibing. This just isn't working. And my company, again, would assure me, well, she's not complaining, so everything is good. So fast forward 18 months, we're at the company picnic. So a festive occasion, everybody's outside, we're in the picnic grounds, having a good time. And so one of my bosses comes over to me. He says, so how are things going? And I'm like, I had complained enough. So at this point, I was kind of tired of hearing myself complain. And so I explained to him, I said, well, I think things are okay, And he was like, oh, okay, well, I just wanted to let you know that your client reached out to us. And she said that things aren't working. And he said, so Friday will be your last day supporting the client. I was embarrassed. I was angry because I'm thinking for the past 18 months, I've been telling you guys that this is not working. And now here she gets to make the decision. And so, now, here I am now being moved off the contract at her request. I was really, really furious. And so my boss, he assured me, he said, well, worst case scenario is that you would have to work on corporate, and we call it the bench. Worst case scenario, you'll have to work on the bench for 2 weeks tops, worst case scenario. So 2 weeks turned into 4 months. And so I went from the dread and the anxiety and the frustration of working for a client that I just didn't sync with or gel with to being on the bench, corporate overhead, for 4 months. And every day past those 2 weeks, I became more and more anxious. Every day I would just be very anxious, thinking this is the day that they're going to fire me. Because like I said, if you're not billing, then you're really no good to the company. For you to make money for them is the benefit. If I'm sitting here and they're having to pay my time for me to sit on the bench, it just wasn't wasn't a good deal for them. And so every day for 4 months, I would show up and I would be so anxious and so fearful and just this is the day they're going to fire me, every single day. And, I would walk in the building every morning just full dreading, scared that this was the day. And, I would get through the doors and I would, shoulders slumped, head hung low. And I would get into the office space and, I would straighten myself up, erect my shoulders, lift my head back up, and walk in, say, Lord, I trust you with me. And I would walk in the building and I would try to maintain that posture for the entirety of the day. But needless to say, it was almost impossible. I would go to the bathroom at least 7, 8, 9 times throughout the day just to have a conversation with God because it was just so stressful, the stress of it all. It was just like, Lord, what are you doing with me? What are we doing? Like, what, why am I under such pressure? And I remember one day in particular, I said, Ari, I think I'm going to just quit. And so I remember sitting at my desk, and I said, when my boss walks by, I'm just going to ask if I can talk with him, and I'm going to quit. Because I just didn't want to be fired. I know it sounds irrational, but I just didn't want to be fired. And I remember going into the bathroom, getting my speech together, trying to get myself together. And I was talking about, what I was going to say. And as clear as I'm talking now, mind you, I'm like frantic because this is like a big deal. Like, oh my God, if I quit and, I'm thinking about all this stuff, and I'm very anxious and very frantic. And so I go into the bathroom and I'm preparing what it is that I'm going to say, what my quitting speech was going to be. And as calm as I'm talking now, Spirit said, don't do anything drastic. And I said, okay. And so I went back to my desk. I sat back down. And, I wish I could say that the anxiety and the stress and all that stuff had subsided, but it did. I was still extremely frustrated. Extremely stressed out. And a few days later, I'm feeling like, okay, maybe I won't quit. I'll just tell them to send me home until they have something for me. And so, again, I went to the bathroom, which had become like my, my place of my conference space with myself and Jesus. So I went to the bathroom, and, I was talking to God. I said, okay, I won't do anything drastic, but I'll tell them I'll tell them to send me home until they find something for me. And again, I'm frantic, and the Holy Spirit says, don't do anything. Just as calm as I'm talking now, don't do anything. And I said, okay. And so I go back to work, and I wish I could tell you that, tell you guys that during this whole 4-month process, or 20 months if you add 22 months if you add 18 months working with the client, then a 4 months on the bench. I wish I could say that during that entire process that that I had found peace, or that I just was confident what God was doing. But I would always remind myself, talking to my husband and talking to my best friend, they were like, take authority, draw the bloodline, giving me all this advice. And God, what God has for you, they're giving me all this advice. And I'm like, I'm hearing the advice, but on the inside, like I said, I was extremely anxious, extremely fearful, extremely nervous, like all these things were going on with me for 22 months. And so, we got through the holiday season and got through, all that stuff. And then eventually I got on contract. And when I got on contract, it was a wonderful thing. God continued to increase and bless. And I got promotions and got increases and raises and all that stuff. And so during that situation, during that scenario, during those 22 months, God had really, and I'm going to share with you guys, because you're probably listening like, well, that doesn't sound like a demonstration of faith. But I'm going to share with you how that was, in fact, a demonstration of faith. Because if you guys remember, although I was frantic, although I was anxious and all that stuff, one of the things that I would always feel before I even stepped in was, Lord, I trust you with me. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back, and I'm going to kind of break down a couple of points to help you guys, track where I'm saying how this was faith or spirituality in practice. So we're going to take a quick break, and we will come right back.
Mark your calendars and plan to attend the 7th Annual Girlfriend Therapy Conference. Join me, Kwanzaa, and a host of friends as we ignite you to action and encourage you in the faith. Girlfriend Therapy Conference will be held on Saturday, March 25th, 2017, from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. at the Westin Hotel, located at 1110 Old Elkridge Landing Road in Ithaca, Maryland, 21090. This is a free conference, so get a carload of your best girlfriends and come out for a little girlfriend therapy. For more information about Girlfriend Therapy Conference and Girlfriend Therapy Ministry, visit our website at www.girlfriendtherapy.org.
So welcome back. Thank you guys for staying tuned in. So now, like I said, I wanted to talk about spirituality from theory into practice. and I share with you guys a story that happened in my life over a 22-month period of time, so almost 2 years of just stress and anxiety and just uncertainty and all this stuff, and how I dealt with that. And one of the things that, that I really want to point out is the fact that every time I stepped into the space where that frustration or that anxiety was, the last words that I said was, Lord, I trust you with me. And that was actually something that I continue to say to this day. And what that did for me was say, okay, no matter what it is that I'm about to walk into, no matter what it looks like, I trust you with me. And for me, that was my faith being demonstrated. It was, I had all these other feelings going on in the inside, but at the end of the day, what I was confessing with my mouth was that, Lord, I trust you with me. And that was kind of the seal. Like there was this mind, heart, and mouth thing happening. Like in my mind, there was like this extreme anxiety. In my heart, it was just, Lord, I trust you. Like I know that you've not brought me this far to leave me. And so there was something going on in my heart, but my mind was saying something different. But what I spoke was life. What I spoke was my faith. And what I was saying was that, Lord, I trust you with me. And so during that situation, I want to give you guys just 3 things, because often people say, okay, well, how do you know that it was God? How do you know God's voice? How do you know that it's not you? And so I want to give you 3 little points that can help you, that help me, and that can help you as well when you're trying to figure out, okay, is it God speaking or is it me trying to come up with a scenario myself? So the first point that I want to give you guys is, God is not going to tell you to quit. He will not tell you to quit, especially if it's something that he's called you to. And so when I was saying, I'm just going to quit, don't do anything drastic. Okay, I'm just going to tell him to send me home. Don't do anything. And so in that obedience, I was able to just kind of maintain. And so the first thing is God is not going to tell you to quit. The thing is that God's voice is going to be different from your voice. So, for example, I was speaking in fear. I was panicked. I was anxious. I had all this high energy going on, like, oh, my God, Lord, I got to, And when God spoke to me and said, don't do anything drastic, it was the most peaceful voice. It wasn't at the same level or the same level of stress or anxiety that I was at. And so God's voice is going to be different than your voice. That's another key of knowing, especially when you're in the midst of a situation and having to make a decision. Listening for God's voice. His voice is going to be different than your voice. If you're lethargic and you're over it and you're done, then God's voice is going to be urgent. If you're, panicked and frustrated and high-strung, then God's voice is going to be peace. His voice is going to be different than your voice, so listen for that. And the third thing is God is going to be consistent with his word. He is going to be consistent with his word. In his word, he tells us so many times and so often, to fear not, believe only. I also love that in his word, he talks about, I know he said it to Samuel, he said it to Jeremiah, and he said, everything that your hands find to touch will be blessed. And those were the words that really resonated with me because the job that I had, God gave me that job. Like if I could share the testimony of how I came to that job, and often I was like, Lord, you brought me here. Like, why would you bring me here for this? And so I knew that, God had brought me to that job, and it was for purpose. And so God is not going to be inconsistent. So if he told me that this is the position for me, then instead of bringing me there for me to falter or for me to fail, he brought me there. And just as his word said, everything that my hands find to touch will be blessed. Now, you might be looking at this situation, and you may say, well, I don't understand the blessing in it. I don't see the blessing. I don't see how God was in it. But I'll tell you, God was in it in the fact that, one, my company carried me on overhead for 4 months. That was nothing but God. God was in it because in the midst of all of this, like I said, this was 2012. So in the midst of all of this, God had given me Girlfriend Therapy Ministry. And so here I am on the one hand, learning to walk in faith in real time while also carrying the mantle of this ministry. And so God was developing in me the ability to hear his word and hear his voice and to be keen to his voice. And so all of that, when I look at it, all of that was a part of what God was doing. And so you may be going through something and you're thinking that God is not in it. You're thinking that it's too heavy, it's too much for you to deal with, it's too much for you to bear. And I just want to encourage you to, one, think about what God said when he called you to that thing, whatever it is, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a job, whether it's a ministry. Think about what God said when he called you to that. And then also listen for God's voice. So when you're in panic, don't be afraid to just stop and say, God, I need to hear you, and listen for his voice. And when I say listen for his voice, some people think that you'll hear an audible voice, but it really is just an unction in your spirit. It really is just a peace in your spirit. It's a settling in your spirit. And you hear it and you understand that it's God that's speaking. And then the third thing, again, is understanding that, God is consistent. He's consistent with his word. And so those are just 3 points that I want you guys to think about as you're navigating whatever the situation is, and knowing that that God is faithful, that he is faithful. And when we think about spirituality, in theory you may say things like, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. But then you find yourself, faltering under, feelings of attack, and you feeling like you're failing and feeling like you're losing. Like in that situation, I felt like I was a failure. Like I completely felt like a failure. But once I got on the other side of it, hindsight being 20/20, I realized that no, God had been with me the whole time. And even though it looked like there was something else going on, what really was happening was that God was developing me and making me more keen to hear from him. And in order for me to carry the ministry, the bigger picture of what he had for me. So that was the story. Those are the quick points, but be a moral. So I want to give you the final moral of the story. So the moral of the story is, one, that God truly is working all things together for your good. He truly is. Whether you can see it, whether you can recognize it in the midst of it, just know that he is working all things together for your good, and trust him with you. We have our desires and we have our plans and we have the things that we think it's supposed to look like. But when God changes that thing, know that there is something greater and something deeper that he is working on. And that which he is working on is very much, working for your good. The second thing I want you to, or the second moral of the story, is that you really can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. There is nothing that you can't do when you have the strength and the power of God behind you. So you truly can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. The third point or third moral of the story is that truly, 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 no weapon formed against you can prosper. And every tongue that rises up against you, he will condemn. Trust God with you. Just say, Lord, I trust you with me. The fourth moral of the story is truly greater is he who is in you than he who is in the world. When we talk about spirituality, we have to understand that there is spiritual warfare, and greater is he who is in you than he who is in the world. And we'll probably talk about spiritual warfare in a later show, but I want you guys to know that truly greater is he who is in you than he who is in the world. And the last thing the last moral of the story that I want to leave you with is that if God be for you, and I want you to say this to yourself, if God be for you, who, and I like to say who a couple of times, who can be against you? So that is just a quick story, that I wanted to share tonight. Like I said, we talked a lot about spirituality, what it is, what it isn't. Really, sometimes I think people have a difficult time in putting it into practice. And so I really want you to look as you go through the day and day, or the day in and day out of your day. or the ins and out of your day, I'm sorry, I want you to look at it from that perspective and look at it and see how God may be working things out for your good. And if you believe that his word is the truth, and if you believe that your faith is of benefit to you, then I just encourage you to really look at that as you navigate whatever the situation, whatever the circumstance. And I want to encourage you, and this is just an extra, this is a, an addendum. What I want to encourage you as well is don't, to not look at, not to add but at the end of it. If someone says, I know I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, but don't add the but. Just know that you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. So I want to thank you guys. We're going to take a quick break, and then I want to come back, and we're going to wrap it up. But I want to take a quick break, and we will be back to wrap it up.
Mark your calendars and plan to attend the 7th Annual Girlfriend Therapy Conference. Join me, Kwanzaa, and a host of friends as we ignite you to action and encourage you in the faith. Girlfriend Therapy Conference will be held on Saturday, March 25th, 2017, from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. at the Westin Hotel, located at 1110 Old Elkridge Landing Road in Ithaca, Maryland, 21090. This is a free conference, so get a carload of your best girlfriends and come out for a little girlfriend therapy. For more information about Girlfriend Therapy Conference and Girlfriend Therapy Ministry, visit our website at www.girlfriendtherapy.org.
Welcome back. This hour, 30 minutes goes by so quickly. It feels like there's always so much I want to talk to you guys about. But I pray that this has been a blessing to you. And I know that when we talk about topics as important as spirituality, I know it takes a couple of times. So I encourage you guys, to take notes. Always encourage that. But I also encourage you guys to go back and listen, and re-listen to the show. I'm sorry. And go back and re-listen to the show, because there's always a lot of great nuggets, out there. So, again, just to close up, I'm going to give you the 3 points. 1, God is not going to tell you to quit. 2, God's voice is going to be different than your voice. If you're panicked, God's voice is going to be peace. If you're lethargic, God's voice is going to be urgent. And the third thing is God is going to be consistent with his word. And the only way that we know that he is consistent with his word is just for us to read his word. And so I encourage you guys to read his word. As you guys know, that is pretty much it for tonight. But as you guys know, there are a couple of events coming up. We have the Tracy Brown Show coming on Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You want to call in and check Miss Tracy Brown out. Her show is always phenomenal. She is my sister here at the Brownstone. Also, you guys know this weekend we have the Bone Marrow Registry Drive, so you can check us out to find out more about that. And lastly, in a week, on March the 25th, we have a Girlfriend Therapy Conference, so we're excited about that. Again, if you guys are not following me on social media, I encourage you to follow me at Girlfriend Therapy Girlfriend Therapy on most social media networks, or Girlfriend Therapy Ministry. And also, I love you guys' comments, questions, so send some questions in, and you can email me at Kwanzaa@girlfriendtherapy.org. Again, that's Kwanzaa@girlfriendtherapy.org. Thank you guys for always tuning in and checking in with your girl. I always have a phenomenal time, and sitting here in the Brownstone sipping on some green tea this evening. So I just want to thank you guys for tuning in, and I look forward to your questions. If you have questions, again, send that to Kwanzaa@girlfriendtherapy.org, and follow us, the Brownstone, as well, on social media. And, thanks for tuning in. Next week we will be here at the same time in the same place talking about something equally interesting. So blessings to you guys. Until next week, blessings.
When I grow up, I want to make a pizza with the most cheese and the most pepperoni at the nation's best price, $6. It's going to be the best pizza ever.
Sorry, kid, it's been done. Introducing the new Little Caesars Extra Most Bestest Pizza, a large pizza with the most cheese and the most pepperoni at the nation's best price.
But my mom said...
Shh! This much cheese and pepperoni is what dreams are made of. Come get a large, hot and ready, extra most bestest pizza for just $6, only at Little Caesars.
Pizza, pizza.
At participating locations plus tax.